In this video, we're going to discuss things that you need to know as an EMT prior to taking the NREMT exam. First thing is to go to the NREMT website, go to EMT, and get familiar with this website. These are things that aren't too necessary for you to know. So after you finish the program, you have 2 years to pass the exam, and if you still don't make it by then, you can take a refresher course, and then you can take the exam again. The exam has 70 to 120 questions. Depending on how well you do, you can get more. And if you get multiple consecutive questions correctly, then you get harder and harder questions. The exam fee is $98, etc. The psychomotor exam shouldn't be anything that you really look into here, because this is what counts for the practical that you're going to be taking in the program that you have signed up for. This is what we're interested in, the cognitive exam. So as you said, 70 to 120 questions. One thing to look out for is that there are 10 pilot questions. These are questions that are sort of like, if they seem to be questions that seem very hard to answer, then you can just assume, oh, this is just a pilot question. I'll just answer it to the best of my ability and move on. These questions do not affect your score, so don't be alarmed if you get an extremely hard question. One thing for you to get familiar with as well is the topics that are going to be on the exam. So you can see that it's mostly adult and a little bit pediatric. However, you still need to study your pediatric stuff. Just because it's mostly adult does not mean you be negligible towards the pediatric area. Mostly here shows that this topic and this topic is the most included into the exam. But all of these are important because they all connect together. So as to how airway affects trauma, medical affects cardiology, and this pretty much is everything that goes into before doing all of this. So it's all connected together, and you need to understand all of them. This doesn't really matter, but it's sort of nice to get an idea of what you're going to be tested on. These are some of the tips that I decided to put together. After you take the exam, it takes about 24 hours for you to get the score. And if you fail that, you get 2 weeks, and then you can retry again without extra fees. I think you get 3 months before you would have to pay another fee. In the exam, you cannot skip questions and come back to it later. You must answer each question before you move on to the next one. One of the tips that I like to give is that whenever you read a question, try to make it seem like you're in the situation, and that what you're reading is actually happening in front of your eyes. And if you had the option to do something, try to formulate an answer in your head. And once you do come up with an answer, then look at the answer options given and try to see which one is most relevant. One of the biggest problems that I see students make, and one that I used to make as well, is that you should not be complicating scenario-based questions, and don't bring conditions into questions that aren't there. One of the questions that I can relate to this to is that one of the patients in your ambulance start to become verbally abusive, and the question asks, what are your next actions? 2 answers given were one is contact the police for assistance, and the second one was keep calm and know that these words aren't meant personally. I chose to call the police for assistance because I made the assumption that the patient would turn from verbally abusive to physically abusive. And this is the thing where you do not bring conditions into the question. So what they're asking you is, what would you do if the patient, how would you react if the patient did such thing? They don't care about other situations. So being physically abusive, the patient becoming physically abusive wasn't brought into the scenario, or it's not in the question, so you shouldn't be bringing that in.